How do you do? Today I'm going to talk to you about a subject that I don't really get into too much in spite of teaching about Qigong, which is the question of healing and healing magic and healing mysticism and healing practices and all of this sort of thing. And the reason I've decided to talk about this, it springs from an interchange I had with one of my students, where this student was asking me about a video that they had seen regarding the tarot. As you know, I've done a whole series of videos on the tarot, and in this video that they had seen, it was a video on the subject of the Queen of Pentacles, or the Queen of Discs. Here it is from the Thoth deck. The Queen of Discs was being presented in this video as being connected to the notion of healing, and as being symbolic of the goddess of healing, or a healing deity or something like that. And there was some instruction on ways to kind of try to invoke the spirit of the card to bring healing into your life, or something like those sorts of lines. And I'm not going to call out the video itself. The person that made the video is somebody who I think is a very good writer, actually, on a number of topics, who's written intelligently on the tarot, and especially intelligently on the subject of Chinese talismans. So highly recommended, actually. Her name is Benabel Wen. But in particular, in this video, I thought that what came out of this was, to me, very typical of the kind of way people in the New Age and esoteric movement, and to a certain extent in the magical movement, and to a larger extent kind of in spirituality in general, how they look at this whole concept of healing. And at the same time, how we look at this concept of the Earth Mother as this kind of healing archetype. Because that's what, if you check out the video I did on the court cards, that's what this court card represents. It's the watery part of Earth. So it's the feminine, the greater feminine, connecting to the natural level, the material level. And one way to understand that card would be to see it as the archetype of the mother or nature goddess, or mother nature, earth goddess, Gaia, whatever you want to call it. So can you say that that is a healing goddess? Well, you can say this. The real concept of the mother goddess or the nature goddess is something that has been tremendously watered down and disempowered over the course of history. And I think that some people will quickly recognize the way that the female goddess archetype has been disempowered kind of by societies that are largely male dominated, and in the sense of being disempowered into this kind of meekness in a world that could be said to be patriarchal. But at the same time, in the modern world, in the Western world, it's been disempowered by people who are claiming to be supportive of that archetype, by basically defanging it into this kind of nice, loving mother that cares for you at all times, and that is this figure of love and light and caring and nurturing, and that nature is something that loves us, and nature, if we were just back to nature, everything would be wonderful. That is just as much something that disempowers that feminine archetype as the other side of making her into, I don't know, the Virgin Mary or something like that. The force of what is natural in every respect, if you embodied it in the form of a goddess, would be that of a bountiful but brutal goddess that the only way to relate to it would be to submit yourself to nature. And submitting to nature is something that is not about healing, I think, in the sense that most people think about it, Because first of all, what it would require is a kind of a radical change of your entire nature of being from something that is apart from nature in the sense of being part of a world that is evolved outside of of raw and unrefined nature. So that is to say, part of the civilized world, let's call it, and going back to nature. And I don't mean back to nature in kind of a friendly sense, because remember that, like, you know, going and buying a farm, that's not going back to nature. That farming is an invention of human beings. Living on a farm or living on a log cabin with a with a little garden somewhere, that's still agriculture. That's still something that humans invented, right? So nature would be to become basically to reject the human part of yourself and become like an animal, to act only on the instinctual level, to become animal-like. And would that make you healthy? Well, it probably would make you healthier in some ways, because you would be following the course of your own instinctual being. If you once you got out of all of the kind of things that are not part of your natural animal instincts, if you were to be able to somehow live like an animal, that would probably make you healthy until the moment it killed you, right? One of the two things would happen, because a lot of people probably wouldn't survive the first few weeks of trying to live like that, and then after that they might get really good at it. Actually, you'd have to become really fit. You'd have to become really good at eating, getting food, at sleeping when you want to sleep, all of those sorts of things. You wouldn't have to follow a timetable. You'd be like an animal, right? And so, you know, if you look at animals in the wild tend to be very healthy, because if they're not healthy, they die. And the moment they stop being healthy, that's when they die. So it would be a kind of a way of living healthily. What I don't recognize, though, is this kind of the healing goddess of that video. And it's not just, you know, I definitely want to emphasize that I'm not trying to specifically criticize the author of the video, because this is something that I've seen all over the place. It's this nature of this healing goddess as this kind of big softy that makes, you know, grants you wishes, and, you know, it's like she's like your mommy who will fix your body for you just because, right? That's not how it works. Everything requires a method, and every method has a kind of a cost. So in theory, let's say you could become one with nature, but almost nobody does that. Definitely not people that, you know, go to drum workshops for a weekend or something like that, go to the park. That's not really going back to nature. Becoming one with nature would require throwing off all aspects of your civilized ways and becoming subject to your natural instincts. So the cost there is that you wouldn't really be human anymore. You'd be closer to an animal. You'd have to become a wild person. And then on the other side, you've got something like Western medicine. So if we look at Western medicine, let's say, as a kind of a method, let's treat it the way we would treat magic at this moment, right? Western medicine is an opposite. The spiritual perspective, let's say, of Western medicine would be the opposite of this notion of returning to the Earth Mother, or returning to nature, or something like that. It's about using higher laws, that is to say science, to devise a way to cheat the default human frailty through complex practices and treatments that extend your life. So the benefit of that is that, for the most part, it does extend your life. The cost is a higher and higher requirement of effort and expense to extend a life that keeps having a lower and lower quality of living to it. That's really the fundamental critique of most Western medicine, is that yes, it'll improve your life, but ultimately the quest for life extension in Western medicine means that you end up living a lot longer in a much worse state, and continually requiring more and more forms of intervention to keep you going until, again, you die. If we look at most forms of sort of healing magic or healing practices, the majority of those are really just things that do nothing. Of the rest, from the point of view of the magical or occult perspective, or to put it in terms related to Qigong, most other healing practices are really just directing qi, so throwing qi around, calling up qi, drawing in qi, storing qi. All of that can make you feel better, but it doesn't fundamentally change anything. It doesn't, if you're sick, it's like trying to treat the symptoms, not the causes. So it can improve things, it can reduce pain, it can help your stress, it can do certain nice things, but it won't go to the root of any of the kind of problems. And if you ignore all those parts of healing magic that don't do anything at all, and you ignore those that are just about throwing around qi, of those that are neither of the above, most of them are in some ways actually similar to the approach of Western medicine. Most forms of magic meant to try to help your health follow up an approach that, while using radically different means, of course, and you can question which one is more or less effective, but the approach is in some ways very similar. It's trying to defy the inevitable through, in the case of magical means or ritual means or religious means or spiritual means, through complex ritual methods or invocations or sacrifices or talismans, all of which are meant to try to direct your will to remove illness. And that can work for a while. But just like with Western medicine, the cost quickly becomes exponential. It requires larger and larger efforts to keep up the same or declining effects. So if you're wondering why I don't talk a lot about healing in the context of Qigong, it's because of that. It's because what most people are looking for is some kind of a way to get around the problems that come out of nature, the problems that come out of the natural state of being human in this case, not nature like the nature goddess. Things like getting older, things like the decline that comes with age, things like the effects of different diseases, and even to try to kind of mitigate elements of what it is that is kind of a good thing in terms of maximizing your living. So we see people who are, when you do things like fad diets, or when you're trying to get some kind of a point system where if you're doing that, you're exercising X amount, then you can, eat more chocolate, or you can go drinking or something like that. All of these kind of almost superstitious methods that people use to try to justify or to try to get around what they think of as being dangerous elements of the way that they live their lives. That's also just trying to do more of that, trying to kind of cheat reality. And the reality is this. This is the only true method of cultivation as far as health is concerned, is that first you have to assume that you're going to grow old, that you're going to die one day after a certain amount of decline. And instead of, the method of cultivation that would be out of a true Qigong perspective would be, first of all, we're not going to behave like an animal, right? We're not going to just go back to our instinct. But instead, we're also not going to try to cheat reality. If you don't start with those 2 points, if what you want is to cheat reality or to get rid of, because really when you're going back into that animal state, to that nature state, that's not going to necessarily prolong your life. It's just you're going to end up maybe avoiding thinking about the consequences of the nature of being alive, right? Animals are not really, except in the moment, not really conscious of their own inevitable death. Humans are. So the start of it is to recognize that it is actually part of the human experience to grow old, to get sick, and eventually to die. Then what can we do about it? Well, the things you can do about it, the things that are going to actually matter, do not have to do with extending your life. And they don't really have to do with trying to fix specific ailments that you might have right now or feel that you have. Instead, the way that that you have to work is to try to create harmony in your body, to try to direct your will, so that you are as healthy as you can be while doing what you are meant to be doing. Because that is the path of the superior individual, right? There are things you are meant to be doing in your life. And so you should be doing those things. And to be healthy while you do those things just means to try to be harmonious in everything you do in your life. The more total you are, the more harmonious you are, then you will be as healthy as possible while you're doing what is actually required of you as the superior individual. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to look like somebody who's really trying to live a very long life. One of the lessons of the initiate is that longevity is not the most important thing, right? And that trying to make this kind of sacrificial offering of denying certain things to yourself in the present in order to extend your expected future lifespan for a few years is not really the right way to go about things. What's the right way to go about things is to do what is right for you, for your superior individual. I'm not talking about indulging in just distractions from fulfilling yourself. It's to be as good a human being as you can be, right? To try to manifest the superior individual. If you've watched my Yifa videos, you know what I'm talking about when I say that everybody at every moment has a choice between embodying the superior individual or the inferior person. And the goal here is try to embody the superior individual and try to be harmonious in all that you do in seeking to embody that, so that you can do that in as healthy a way as possible, and then do it as much as you can, as fully as possible. Does this have a cost? Well, yes, because this is true cultivation. And what true cultivation, its cost, is constant discipline, and it's realism. Realism doesn't pretend that you're going to have a quick miracle cure, that you're going to find some magic spell that's going to mean that you're going to be reversing the effects of the aging process, or that you're never going to die, right? It demands also that you don't reduce yourself to an unconsciousness, reduce yourself to an animal, whether it be by trying to retreat into your animal nature, or by trying to distract yourself through petty indulgences or things like that, by forgetting the superior individual, and that you don't chase after some fantasy, right? Some idea of how you're going to somehow fix all your problems if you can find the right magic words. It actually ends up promising very little when you think about it. So the only thing that really makes it better than any of the other options is that it actually does what it promises to do. Of all the other methods I've ever seen in any of my studies, some of them certainly do things, some of them don't do anything at all. But none of them do what they actually appear to promise, or what the people that pursue them are hoping that it promises. And why waste your time with that? If you know that these supposed quick methods that are going to marvelously resolve all of your problems are not actually going to do that, then why pursue it? Why not instead dedicate yourself to a path of being the best person you can be in the context of what your reality is right now, and trying to make a daily advancement, a daily improvement in that, right? If you can become a little bit closer to your best self, to your superior individual, if you can make a daily step of trying to be a little more committed to embodying the higher self in a real way, not in the sense of, making some kind of affirmations or visualizations or things like that, but in the sense of actually choosing to live in a way that reflects that superior individual in the daily choices that you make, and then not worrying about that other part, about the question of your health. You know that someday you're going to die. Everybody watching this knows that someday you're going to die. So that's not something that is worth concerning yourself about, right? One of the Stoic philosophers said once that there are things that you can that you can control, and there's things that you can't control. And what is the point of concerning yourself about the things you can't control? There's nothing you can do about them. So don't worry about the things you can control. Just work at controlling them, right? That there's no point in worrying either way. Try to make yourself focus on those things you can accomplish in the life, in the time that you have. And one of the best things, in fact, for the harmony of your being is to be able to be as total as possible. And it's not going to save your life. It's not going to stop you from growing old. It's not going to stop you from getting colds. It's not going to stop you from someday getting really sick and then eventually dying, or just, dying of old age or of some other reason, fast or slow. But really, is it worth it to try to draw out your life at the expense of not having actually lived in the here and now, and having lived the most effectively you can in the here and now? Not the most indulgently, but the most able to do the best for yourself and for the people around you and for the world around you, trying to manifest your best self. So that's really the only method I can teach people about that. Of course, if you're doing Qigong exercises, that's good for your health, right? If you check out the videos in the Yifa Society, in those basic exercises, doing Qigong, even just the physical exercises are probably good for you, right? If you're doing the physical exercises and actually doing the meditation, focusing on Qi breathing, relaxing, right? Relaxation does a big part of this. The breathing, drawing in Qi into yourself, cultivating that, those are all good things. They're not going to keep you from dying. They're not going to fix, chronic problems. They might change some of how you are able to live with them. They might change some of your ability to deal with them. And you might find a general improvement in your whole state of happiness if you're doing Qigong in the really right way, because you're engaging in something fulfilling. So certainly I would recommend that. But you shouldn't do Qigong just because you think it's going to heal you, right? That's not the point of Qigong. The point of Qigong is cultivation. It's connecting to the superior individual. It's developing your level of awareness so that you end up being able to manifest this higher self and then learn how to use it in the world to try to make a real effect on the world around you. And if you're concerning yourself with that, then does it really matter if you live to be 75 or if you live to be 80 or if you die at 40, right? What matters is what you've done during that time and the effects that will have after you're not there. That's the thing to focus on. So that's everything for this video. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Check out the playlist for the Yifa Society. If you were drawn here because of the tarot element of this discussion, check out the tarot series. That one's completed already, and you'll see a whole bunch of very interesting details about the esoteric symbolism associated with the cards. And please subscribe. If you're interested in kind of what I was talking about today and following a training program, a curriculum of development, of cultivation training that you can work with in a context of a teaching system, then look into the Yifa Society. Get in touch with me about it. And you can try to apply for being part of that program, which will give you a step-by-step training in Qigong and in the study of the cosmology around Qigong, so that you can work on connecting to the superior individual. And finally, check out, there's going to be a link below to the Yifa Society newsletter, you could call it, which is, a free, and it will send you an email, maybe one email a month, with just a breakdown of some of the things I've been teaching in the month, with interesting stuff to read or video links. And anyone who signs up to that newsletter. When you sign up, in your first sign up email, there'll be a link to the free PDF copy of The Path and the Power, which is my interpretation of the Tao Te Ching and interpretation with commentary. So if you want to get a free PDF copy of The Path and the Power, please sign up to that newsletter, and you'll also find some very interesting material every month that we promise it won't bury you in any spam or any of that. None of that is going to go to anybody else. It's just a mailing list for people that want to follow some of my teachings beyond just the YouTube channel and in other stuff. Feel free to add me also on Facebook if you want to. And well, check out everything. If you're interested in more, check out the Yifa Society and get in touch. Thank you very much.